For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful, and will not turn away his face from you if ye turn unto him. That's 2 Chronicles 30:9. So what does that mean? You know, bend over to God? No, it's to speak to God, to speak truth to God, because we are God's mirror. And God is, Moses asked God, "What's your name?" And God said, "I am a work in progress," meaning the God that we worship is not even fulfilled or complete because we are part and parcel. And that's why my service is to love's co creation. I do not give God that name. Love is what I feel in my heart. I feel that unconditional love of God in my heart. I feel that unconditional forgiveness in Jesus Christ in my consciousness, right? And that's why Muslims, Muslims are like Christians on steroids, and I'm not saying there are Christians on steroids. I said they're like, and I'd surely love to see some Christians or all Christians pray 5 times a day. I probably pray 100 times a day, because what is prayer but your presence with love's co-creation, where you consciously are intent in love's co-creation, right? So when I go out and about, when I do this show, I pray first, and I put myself in love's co-creation, right? I feel love's unconscious, um, because what I see the trouble of humanity on this earth. Dante's Inferno, right, is one of my favorite books because it speaks. It's written 7 centuries ago, and yet it still speaks to our you know daily complaint. What should I believe? What am I doing here? What am I? Um, I have these feelings of anger and love, and I can't tell what they are, and one leads to the other, and what's going on here? Really, what's going on here, right? And the answer to all of that, when you get to the end of the story, is speaking truth to power. And the ultimate power is our individual characteristic of how we experience our our lives through this avatar of a body. And Dante realizes he's not his body because he has to go, across the River Jordan through to Hades to go get his sweetheart, right? And he's constantly confronted with all of these things of who, what, where, how, what am I doing, what's going on here, and what's the real story, right? And the real story is you are the decider, you know? Within the construct of a culture, what is a god or a religion or a political structure or an economic structure or any of the above? It is all an illusion of ego, right? To control the masses. And that's why we're having unfettered war everywhere. I mean, we're about to have World War III. People don't think it is, but after World War I, people said, no, we're not doing that again. And then 20 years later, we just, and they should have realized because at Versailles, they didn't have a capitulation. They had a armistice, meaning just okay, we're not going to fight at this moment. But the war was still going on because Germany was taken apart and had their face rubbed in the dirt. when they didn't lose the war, they could have kept going. And and that is the story of Russia. But what is really what I keep saying is that um, this isn't a war between Russia and the Ukraine, right? And it isn't even a war between Russia and the West. This is a unseen entity that I call the unipolar hegemony, transnational hegemony um, of a fascist state, right? And fascism is where corporation rules, not money, that's capitalism, not the state over the means of production, that's communism, um, and not what the EU has, which is socialism, democratic, which is a kind of hybrid of capitalism and communism put together, right? And after World War II, this stage was set for all of these things, and they're all playing amongst all during the Cold War. The United States and Russia were buddies. We fed Russia. Russia gave us strategic metals and things of that nature. And they were the loyal opposition, meaning they were not a real threat. A number of times we nearly had nuclear war. We didn't, Cuban Missile Crisis, and a good example. So, because there was a Russian submarine that the U.S. Navy was depth charging, and they just took it, and they had nuclear weapons. They had nuclear tipped um, torpedoes, and they had nuclear missiles, which they could have launched, right? But the captain and the political guy, he just said, "Nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. Not going to do it," because they knew if they did it, that would be it. That'd be nuclear war. That one submarine had enough firepower to kill everyone on the eastern seaboard and the Gulf of Mexico. Like maybe 120 million people. Yeah, that would have been it. We would have unloaded our nuclear arsenal on Russia. Russia would, before they were obliterated, would have unloaded theirs, and the Earth would be turned into a cinder. Right now, all that is needed is 100 nuclear weapons exploded in an exchange. Just 100. The United States has 30,000. Russia has 30,000 deliverable nuclear weapons, and many of them hydrogen bombs. Right. So, uh, if we just were to unload, if Russia gets pushed in a corner, which they already are, I mean, but they really aren't, because the advances of the Ukraine in the north were understood, meaning basically Russia just left there, meaning Russia took more property than they expected to. Right? They really just expected to go to the capital, cut off the head, and put in a puppet government. Right? Didn't happen. This wasn't Hungary, 1950s, whatever. Right? So that didn't happen, and they thought bringing in a military might, and they weren't ready to use that military might. They had that big long line of tanks and personnel carriers, and it went way ahead of whatever it could be supplied. And it stayed there for weeks, right? Because they couldn't use it. They couldn't even get it out of there. So Ukrainians had the Javelin missiles, and they it took out a few in the front, few in the back, stuck everything there, started shooting at the guys. And the defensive Ukrainians were hidden, the Russians out in plain sight. So that was a mistake, right? So they kind of got the best they could, the guys out of there. They did a few other things here and there where Ukraine basically had to respond and not have a offensive part to this. But that was fine, because it forced NATO and the West to arm them to the teeth, and for them to have 2 or 3 months to train their force to be unified, right? And so here at the beginning of September, they took all those weapons, especially the HIMARS. I mean, we only gave them 16 launchers, and 16 ate the crap out of the Russian advantage. Now we're still sending them more, and so when they get about 40, Russia's advantage of artillery, their old style uh, of fighting a war of, bringing in heavy artillery, obliterating 2 miles in front of them, and then moving through it, obliterating the next 2 miles and moving through it, and that's what they did to Mariupol and all the other regions in that neck of the woods. Now they went down into the south to cut off the use of the Black Sea, and they went to a city, a pretty big city, starts with a C, I think, but it's the stepping stone to Odessa, right, which is their main port on the Black Sea, right, Ukraine's main port. Well, Ukrainians kind of stopped them there and held them, for 2 months along that line, and it was a big long line. So Russia was overextended and had real problems, resupplying. And as the Ukrainians left when the Russians came through, they took out a good deal of the transportation because there are a lot of rivers there and there are a lot of bridges, and the Ukrainians took out most of them. So it made transportation of supply difficult, not impossible, difficult, right? Then when they got to HIMARS, they really went after the bridges, and that made it even, again, not impossible, but way more difficult, right? And so they would have shortages, and they couldn't feed the guys and all the rest, and their command and control of the army they brought in there, those guys were just young kids, not really trained. They had no sergeants, they had no first lieutenants who were really part of command and control. And so they had about 60,000 soldiers there who weren't really being supplied, who were getting hungry, getting shot at. And so, they went and did things that you shouldn't do. And that is what Ukraine calls, things against humanity. Well, war is a thing against humanity, right? And whenever you get in a war, both sides do terrible things. Look at us. We dropped atomic bombs on Japan, and they were ready to sue for peace for almost a year before we did that. And they were ready to sue peace soon as we took over Tiananmen and started bringing the B-29s in to firebomb their cities. As soon as they fired, we fired, we firebombed Tokyo, Kyoto, and another major city, and we killed almost 500,000 people in one night, incinerated them, not with nuclear weapons, but with incendiaries and concussion bombs. Right? Did bang. I mean, those three major cities with their industrial might, right? And so we took it out, right? And they weren't doing that much anyway because we'd already beaten them on every level in their empire all around, right? And we could have just put our ships around that area of the South China Sea and the Japanese Sea, and just, okay, they can't go anywhere, they can't do anything, they have to sue, and they did. Basically that's what we did, and we went into the island that's right there in Japan, Okinawa, and we lost 50,000 Marines in like 3 or 4 weeks. It was the worst, But the Japanese showed what they were, even though they were beaten, this is how they were going to relate to Jingai, white guys attacking their homeland, right? So we got a good picture of that. But we did it to experiment. That was the first place we used napalm in a serious way, like flamethrowers and tanks that could shoot rivers of napalm into. And napalm, it's not just liquid gasoline, it's gasoline with plastic in it. So it's like a gooiness. And so it shot it like a fire hose, and it would go into a cave and it would cover everything, and go around corners. And if you got it, let's say, on your leg and you tried to brush it, if it was just gasoline, you could have just brushed it off, but this stuff sticks. You take your hand and you brush it, now it's all over your hand, all over your arm, and it eats all the way to the bone. And we were using weapons like that, and we used it as a laboratory, just like we used a city. Howard Zinn, he was a bombardier, and he's flying at 30,000 feet, doesn't see anything but a few puffs of smoke, but he didn't see the damage. But 17 days before the end of the war, his group flew over France and bombed a city with napalm bombs, right, from the sky, and killed 17,000 people. And the worst of death, I mean, just burnt them alive, right? And it was during the day, daylight bombing, right? And the bombs, France was already pretty much conquered. There were just a few Germans here and there, but there was no artillery, no fighters coming. So they were, it was like a milk run to them. But it was a test of these bombs, and we killed 17,000. Now, it was estimated that were only 1,100 German Nazi guys there. That meant the other 16,000 were French folk. And we asked General de Gaulle, what city should we, we got these 12 cities. He picked the one that was his political enemy, and we incinerated them for him. And that's what we did, in Afghanistan, that 20-year war. We did never do anything really politically or militarily correct, because all we did was we found the most corrupt people and we killed for them, right? Pretty much what the Roman Empire did, right? So that's where we stand. We have been at war now pretty much since Christopher Columbus came here, and the real people that are in harm's way in this unipolar, you know, transnational hegemony of fascism is not, Russia or Ukraine. It is or Yemen or um, Palestine or Syria or Darfur or any of those kind of places where war is going on, because it's a concerted effort. And the major thing that this unipolar structure has to take down is the United States, not basically North America, um, the EU, Russia, China. Right now, China again. So the leadership, and I keep saying this, and people, what are you talking about? I can't believe, I keep saying that the Russia-Ukraine war is the war of the Vlads. There's Vladimir Putin and Vlad, the stand-up comedian president, right? And so, ooh, this is really good coffee with chocolate in it. Yum, yum, yum. So, because both sides are doing things that aren't militarily, I mean, Ukraine is doing best militarily because they are, Russia has a military and economic force 100 times bigger than they are, right? And so, but Russia thought they could just go in and bluster their way and, like I said, cut off the head. And the guy was supposed to give up and let Russia, but Putin was reading the script and didn't realize he was being set up. So he got totally involved, because there were many things he could have done. I mean, he could have dealt with this problem 20 years ago when he first became president of Russia, right? But he didn't. He just took the money, right? And back in, 1999 to 2004, Russia, 40% of its GDP was manufacturing. 80% of its population was employed in that. About 20% was or 30% was in services, and and that services restaurants, hospitals, supermarkets, movies, whatever, right? That's services. Your automotive, the guy at the gas station, services. Then the other 30%, give or take, was the energy industry, because Russia has more of everything than anybody. I mean, some places have more oil, some places have oil that's easier to get at. Um, but Russia has, the large that, and also coal, and also uranium, and also exotic metals, and also, they have the largest fertilizer industry. They are one of the three big bread baskets of the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And today, 80% of their GDP is the oil and energy industry. Manufacturing is 8%. The thing that employed 60% of the people is 8%. And that's why they can't make enough bullets or tanks, because they don't have the manufacturing, right? And services is maybe 40%, right? And the rest is energy. Now they cut off the gas line to Germany, and the gasoline and the oil to the rest of the EU. Well, even though they're one of the largest, I mean, United States is number one, Middle East number two, Russia number three. But Russia was right there, and they had the cheapest way of delivering the product, and that was through pipelines. Putting things on ships, and it's complicated. So, but it can be done, and so you have to realize there should be no shortages in the United States. There should be no inflation, right? First they, blamed it on the supply chain, and now, the guys got there are too many people working, and they're getting paid too much, and no, the manufacturers, people who make profit, the capitalists, saw an opportunity to raise prices, so they could, and they did. And you just have to look on their bottom lines, their profit line, especially the oil companies. Whoa, they're making more money than they ever, ever, ever have. Period. And we keep giving them tax breaks. This inflation bill. Billions have been given to the oil industries. Plus, um, the guy from West Virginia got them to um, okay, not just tax breaks for the oil company, but environmental. They no longer have to file. They can go dig anywhere they want. They can, the period of people going, but what's going to happen to my front yard with that oil? That's all gone. That's fascism. We are seeing fascism right now. So under Joe Biden, right? And last summer, he was trying to get every employer under 100 people to mandate everyone get a shot and a mask. Now we're over it. I mean, come on, guys. We are being played, and it's not one country doing it. This is a transnational, and that's why things are so confused, because there's a small group of people that have this transnational motif, right? Of world domination, right? And it's not just America being hegemonic, basically America is a chump, and it's getting, you know. So don't believe a word I say. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Everything I tell you is just this is like I Love Lucy. Oh, Ricky, Lucy, you got some explaining to do. And so, don't believe a word I say, right? And if you are a snowflake, a infantile consciousness, someone who gets really upset if what they hear is not the thing that is their silo, then you shouldn't watch the show. And the fact that nobody watches it basically makes me feel that what I'm saying is true, because whenever you speak truth to power, the best way to deal with it is ignore it, right? So the So right now is and congratulations and happy last day of summer, right? Today is the last day of summer in North America, and we now march towards the winter. The evenings are going to get shorter and shorter. They already are. I think about a month ago was the longest evenings. It used to stay somewhat light into around 9:30 here. Now it's dark by quarter to nine. So I have had quite an enjoyable summer because before the inflation, my disposable income was maybe four between 4 and 5 after I paid my taxes, my this, my phone, my that, you know, all of those bills that you have to pay every month. I had about 450 bucks. Now I have disposable income of somewhere between 250 bucks and 325, right? And so about 70 to 120 of that has to go for food, right? That wasn't in the I consider my food my disposable income because I don't have to buy food. I have a lot of my little garden has been kicking out beans like you can't believe, but I get a little tired of string beans and navy beans, and I still love those big green things. I forget what they're called, but anyway, it's in a bean lima beans. That's the one. That's my favorite. So because I make them into a porridge, so it's very rich and buttery and etc. So you can do a lot with seasoning. So and the rich, when the pandemic hit, January 2020, people freaked out. It was end of time, so they were all getting out of town and looking for places that they could hide away, and this was one of them. And so they and my little corner of the three counties, two states, and there's a big lake right by me and a whole bunch of rivers, so it's pretty, a lot of water. And so they came and they bought up the cheap, easy stuff and put the pressure on the poor, the last remaining elements of the holler folk. And so those 2 years, I saw a good portion of the holler folk die because so we're the smallest little city is a place called Mountain City. What's another good little Damascus? What's another good little city that is exemplified? Those two, and because they're right from 81, and the road that goes from 81 to Boone is right through those two cities. So there was a lot of people going in between, and there were enough, and they were kind of touristy little towns, but not really. Kind of, but not really, because both of their towns had these, uh, you know, chamber of commerces that were we don't want anything to change, and so they had a flow of people who were coming in and out, right? So it wasn't like they were like me. I'm like totally isolated. I see nobody unless I go out, and so people got infected. And what did the town fathers do? Um, they had earlier on sold their two little county medical centers to large corporations. And during the pandemic, the large corporations closed down the hospitals. So there was no healthcare whatsoever, right? And and both of them closed their health departments. The one lady who was really good, they just fired her. She was like going up and because what happened was not only did tourists come in, but we have um about 15 years ago, the state and federal government gave these two counties a choice between community college and a jail. And the Chamber of Commerce decided, hey, let's have 'em a jail, and they convinced the folk that a jail would be a better idea than a community college because jail would give them a job, and a community college should just make people, you know, um, be liberal. And so they built it, and then the Chamber of Commerce put factories, chumpy, crappy things, not a real good job, around the jail, and forced the inmates to work in the factories for 10 cents a day, right? And so they thought that was great. And that went on for about 10 years. And then the county sold the jail, the two counties sold the jail to a for profit corporation, right? And so the jail used to have 300 people. Well, their factories got bigger and bigger. They needed more people to work in them, and they didn't want to pay, a dollar an hour. So they sold it to one of the Chamber of Commerce's guy buddies, and he was on, complete, unbelievably, one of the guys on the Chamber of Commerce who was on the board of this for-profit, international prison complex company, who also has mercenaries. I won't mention the name, um, and fought in the Iraq and Afghani war for money. Um, Basically, um, took took that prison that they bought for a nickel, and then let ICE put people. So they went from a jail about 300 that was built for about 300, and they put 1,800 people in there. And the ICE folk were just flowing people in and out of the um, prison, right? And the corporation that um, purchased the jail, there was what you call it, a trailer park up there for people who would live and work in the jail. Right, there were about 100 trailers, give or take, and they expanded it over the years once they bought the prison because they went from 300 people to 1,800 people, and then they expanded it more and made it a um, old folks, home, a retirement place. So instead of being in a building and getting your meal, they put old folks in a trailer, right? And more like, and they bought a whole bunch of these FEMA campers that came from, when New Orleans, and they were like death traps of poison gas and chemicals, and put the old people in them, and would just deliver them paper bags with peanut butter jelly sandwiches in, right? And the women who were married to the husbands of the guys who um, worked in that prison, um, you know, so there's this big flood of ICE people, like a flow of 800 uh, illegal incarcerated people going through this place via the good old Donnie Chump administration, and so that prison got amazingly infected, and they didn't test anybody. They said, "Oh, there's no." They just had the flu. They're just sick. We'll give them an aspirin, and they would move the guys out when they were about to die. I mean, they didn't put them on ventilators or anything, and they'd move them out to who knows, right? That's a big question. But it was infecting everyone in that place. All the guys who worked there got infected. They brought it home and infected their their kids and their wives, right? And then the wives went and took care of the old folks in the trailer camp. I mean, they lived in a trailer camp too, and so that became a unbelievably hot spot. And what did the brainchild of um, the guys taking care of the old folks? They sent them back home to their families. So it infected the whole 3 counties. Now, we were like, Numerologically, per capita, we were some of the most infected places in the United States, and we're super rural. How did that happen? And that was pretty much why we lost, 2 million people or a million people. How many people? America lost more. Here we are, the richest country in the world, number one industrial nation. How did we lose more folk? Right? Either unbelievable incompetence and maybe, or somebody wanted to basically start taking a sledgehammer to the pillars of our country, right? So that happened, and here we are. We're coming up, and Joe go, oh, we're over it. Go on with your life. Whereas less than a year ago, he said, oh no, everyone's got to be masked up. And anyway, the sad thing that I see is in the last 2 months, um, I had my cataracts taken out, and my eyes. I have to say, my eyeballs. I can really see. I mean, my other problems that my diabetes and plaque and all the other things wrong with me still affect my eyes. I still have floaters and still have gooey eyes and a few other things, but boy, I can see pretty good, right? I mean, it used to be just a blur. Now it's really sharp. I mean, I can drive a car. I can actually drive at night, which is pretty amazing, but I don't, period. Don't do it. Because I don't drive my car because I don't have money for gas, right? But anybody who wants to give me some money, PayPal, dudewake42 at Gmail, dudewake42 at Gmail. So politically in the United States, Donnie Trump, like I said, took a sledgehammer. He took a sledgehammer to what they used to call in the Ronald Reagan days, the administrative, not no, the bureaucratic state, and then it got translated into the swamp. And so and then people are, oh, you can't change, the government is terrible. Like, oh, that's, I hate the government. I mean, do you hate your postman? You know? Anyway, I mean, that's the closest we come to knowing what our government is seeing entities like that. And everyone wants, I want to get rid of the government. Well, say goodbye to your Social Security check or any other check you get from the government, right? And compared to every other I mean, we are the bottom of the barrel. Cuba, that we call a terrorist state, we do everything we can to crush them just for so whatever politician can get a few more votes, from the disgruntled Cuban citizens who came to America and made way more money than if they stayed in Cuba. Um, I mean, these things, you just step back and take a look at this stuff and you can see what's going on. But nobody does. Everyone blames somebody else. Nobody ever wants to look at themselves, right? Which is something I have to do 40 times a day. Nobody wants to ask God for not, oh, give me that card, God. Oh, I want that girlfriend, God. I want that new job, God. No, my prayer is, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, as was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without amen. Father, Sky, Mother Earth, Holy Spirit, come into my heart and consciousness so I can be my best to serve love's co-creation. So that in every day and every way I can take the piece of love's co-creation and be my best, do my best, not try, do. That's what I pray 40, 50 times a day. And every time I misplace something and I go, where is that thing? And oh, there it is. I say, thank you, God. Everything when I drink this really yummy last bits of this cup of coffee, I say, thank you, God. Every time I wake up in the morning in screaming pain, I say, thank you, God. Right? Took me 2 hours to get out of bed this morning. But not many people do any of that, you know, and I live on, my disposable income is between 250 bucks and 320 bucks a month, you know. Now it's going to get a little more interesting in the winter because I hardly use any electricity now, but the only heat I have is electricity. So that'll be interesting. And getting in and out of here, and my car is already, my front end, I basically, yeah, pony or good pony, I'll fix you. I won't get a new pony. I'll fix you. But my struts are going, and so I don't drive around, unless and I know every road, so I only go on the roads that really don't stress it out, right? Like just getting out of here, my 2-mile drive up my road into the Forest Service road, into the other road, onto the county road, you know, I do it at about 3 miles an hour. The other moron's the guy who just drove by. I mean, I don't, he just spun his frigging wheels, which make, holes. So when we have a big rain, it'll wash the road away. Now I have to go with a rake and rake what that moron did, so the road won't, be destroyed. No matter how I try to explain to him, if you only go 3 miles an hour, you will put, 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 put your way out. You won't have to spin your wheels. But he tries to do 40 miles out, and it's a pretty, this road before the road is a pretty steep road. And that's why the other one on the other side is like people just couldn't not help themselves. And it's the death road. We have potholes on the other side of this road that are bigger than cars, that are 20 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 3 feet deep, right? And one end is blown, it's so steep, it blew out the side and it kind of goes off into the woods, right? But if it didn't have that thing to go off into the woods, it would rip the whole road apart. But we have about 6 of those potholes that are just, and then there's a section that it didn't blow off and go into the thing. It has a whole frigging thing about a quarter of a mile long that is, it's only 2 feet wide, but it's about 3 feet deep, and it goes for a quarter of a mile. So you got to like drive somewhat into the forest and about what's left of the road. I mean, and this is what people do around here all the freaking time. You'd think they'd see this shit, but they don't. And we're just a microcosm of the rest of this, right? So, um, I had to get my eyes operated on about a month and a half ago, and 3 of the people around here I've helped and know, and all the rest I've got, and they were all different. I got them all to say, "Oh yeah, I can drive that day, sure, no problem. You pay for the gas?" I said, "Yeah, I'll pay for the gas." Anyway, Saturday, well, the first one I called up on Friday. "Hey, you ready?" "Oh, I can't do it." "Oh, why can't you do it?" "Well, I got a DUI. I'm in j they just let I can't drive," and I said, "So." "Oh, no, I'm still driving, but I can't drive you," "So you ready to take care of me on Monday?" No, yeah, no, I can't. I'm drunk and I fell asleep on my lawn, and I'm in the hospital, and I almost died from, heat prostration." I said, "Oh, okay." Third one I called up, and, who I'm always there for, and I said, "So, and they said, "No." I said, "So, is there any reason? Your car okay?" "Oh, yeah, my car's okay." And they're pretty rich too, you know, and, you can't, I just don't wanna do it. I said, "But I have no one else. You said you'd do it. You're the only one. I have," it's like 2 days, where am I gonna find somebody else? I don't care. It's like, so I was driving, on a Sunday. It was really a beautiful day. I found an extra $20. I was gonna go, down the road to where this place has a pretty good breakfast for $8, and it has nice Wi-Fi, and it's, I do a show there or go on the internet. And so, I was driving my way and I passed a church that I must have passed a million times before, and, I never see anybody, and the thing just had cars all over it. And I said, "Oh, I'm gonna go in there." So I'm thinking about how am I gonna get to the right, right? So I park, and every parking spot is full, but there's one right in front of the door for handicap, and and I got a handicap sticker. So I park right there. I hobble in. This woman goes, "How can we help you?" Right, and I'm hearing the preacher give the sermon about the Good Samaritan, and I go, "Well, tomorrow, Monday, I need someone to drive me to the hospital to get my eyes operated." And she goes, I think I know just who to ask. And she goes down amongst the people there in the congregation and taps this guy in the thing while the guy's going on about the Good Samaritan, taps him. I see them talking. He comes up and he's kind of giggling, comes up to me. "Oh, I was wondering how to be the Good Samaritan. You're it." I said, "Okay." And he said, "Where you live?" I told him. He said, "I know exactly where it is." And most people can't even find it, even the people who live here. And I explained how to get there. Never get here. So he knows exactly what I was talking about, right? So he says, "I'll see you at 8." I said, "Okay." So he picks me up and he's, "I'm going to take you to break." So, "Well, I'm going to get operated. They're going to knock me out. Da, da, da. I said, "Okay, well, I'll take you to lunch." So we get there and we get there, maybe an hour before they wanted me in, right? So and this is, 2 months ago. And nobody around here in Tennessee was even wearing, when everyone was dying, you know, the average death count for one of the littlest county of that. And I would go and have lunch with the judge there, chief of police, and this guy who ran the mortuary. And it was the only mortuary within the, 2.5 um, counties. And he was the richest guy. He owned a lot of property. And we go to lunch, we talk about stuff, and they loved it taking me out to lunch because they would have their little opinions, and then they'd say, "Okay, what do you think of all the crap we just said?" And I would give them my 411 on it. And I was really good at giving, not just my opinion, but hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, just like I do with you guys, right? And so we were at lunch, and so it had been a year of this, right? And I've been, sequestered up here. And so we're having lunch, and I say, and it wasn't even a year. It was like, the thing started in January 20. And so it was like, June of 20, right? So I said, so to the mortuary guy, because they closed the hospital, they closed the health department. There were no statistics on anyone living or dead. He was the closest guy because he, everyone who died, he went and got them and prepared them and put them in the ground. So I said, "So what has been the outcome of COVID here?" He goes, "Business has been the best ever." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, the average between, January and May is maybe 40 people, right?" He said, "This January to May, well, it wasn't even May, it was June, um, May, June, May, so May had already, so it was June. So from January to June was 1,900 people." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, business has been great." And that didn't touch anyone's radar screen whatso freaking ever. To me, I started to dig into, how did that happen? And how it happened was how I explained it happened, through the prison. So have they changed anything? No. It's gotten worse. Healthcare here's gotten worse. I have to go to another state. I mean, if I wasn't privy and understood how things work, I'd have no healthcare because all the people around here have no healthcare, right? So, and that's why they're dying off, and they want to turn this place into a Las Vegas. I mean, it's really pretty. It's got a big lake, but they have so polluted the lake just with the few extra people that are here. I mean, I wouldn't go swimming in that lake if you paid me. I go into the other state, into North Carolina, where what's the name of that lake? I mean, that river. It kind of feeds into the lake. The three big rivers that come zipping off. One from Mount Mitchell. I guess that's the Nollachucky. Another one between Boone and that, and I forget which one that is. It kind of goes through Micahville, and then there is the Watoga River, and so there, these are rivers that come from the mountains. The water comes in, it's a rainforest, there's a lot of rain, so they're pretty pristine. And so there's two places that are really nice to go swimming in, and they got parking lot and everything, and this place for handicapped people. It's, and it's only about 6, 7 miles from my front door, so that's where I go. And the other place I go is one of those rivers feeds. So the thing about it's not just one big lake because it's a Tooth Mountain Range. When they built the dam, they flooded out 200 square miles, and so there are all these communities on top, and then all these little rivulets, and the water is coming from the southeast, going towards the north um, into the big lake. So the big lake is, ugh, but these little lakes or ponds or that are feeding the big lake, they're still pretty fresh, right? People go fishing in them, and there's one going the other way that is, a boat ramp, right? So, and that one's closer. That's 4 miles or even less to my front door. So during the summertime, it's hot. What I do is during the week when no one's there, I drive over to the boat ramp. I park, and it's a really nice boat ramp. It's right in the woods, and it has a bathroom, lots of parking. And I park near the ramp, and there's trees all around the lake. So I park right there. And there's these two trees that are beautiful. I just open my car door. I take out my hammock. I tie it on those two trees. And then I take my lawn chair, and I have these nice little swimming shoes I put on. And I walk down the ramp until the water's up to my knees. I put the the chair on the concrete, and it's not a steep, it's only maybe 4 degrees, not really like this, but 4 degrees. So I go down and I put the chair and I put my feet in the water and I read a book and drink something, and there's a trees that, so I'm under the shade of the trees, got my feet in the water, and I'm reading a book, right? So that's how I spent most of my summer. And there are things to do around the lodge because I'm basically camping. So all of my water and light and this is very, mm, sustainable. That's what it is. I mean, that's why I moved here. I knew this place would be sustainable. And by me having to fix things, I have to walk around and do this and do that, and that's what gives me exercise and health. And that's why my weight, instead of being 460 pounds, I am 193, right? So that's why I'm alive. But my body's, has suffered the ravages of all the stuff I did to it. Anyway, walking around for 20 years, 150 to 240 pounds overweight, that's really amazing. I'm watching all these trees, they're dropping their leaves, and the leaves are still green. They're either green or black. And what that means is the trees, even though they got leaves and they look pretty good, they are not healthy. They're called, in the indigenous folk call them ghost trees. Anyway, so I was in that church, and the guy, I got the guy to drive me. He drives me there. We have it's about 60 miles from my front door. So we have a nice conversation. I tell him a lot of stories. He's like just blown away. And so we go in. I had to bring him in to show that I actually had, because they weren't going to operate. They don't operate unless you got a physical person to drive you home after they operate, because you can't see anything. They wrap your eyes up and they can't see anything. And the next day you got to come back, and then they unwrap you, and then they see what happened. So anyway, we go in there, we sit down, we sign up. There's hardly anybody there, right? So the whatchamacallit, lady comes over and goes, "Your friend has to go, wait in the car." I said, "What are you talking about?" And it's really hot, right? It's still August. It's a hot day. It's like 90 degrees, and there's no trees in the parking lot. He's gotta sit in his car, and he doesn't have air conditioning. And she goes, "Yes, he has to, sit in the car because of COVID regulations." I said, "COVID's over, come on." And we're wearing masks, and we're 6 feet away from, we're 20, 30 feet away from the closest. This was a big waiting room, like 100 people could sit in there, and there were only 4 people in there at the other end, right? She goes, "Well, it's our protocol." I said, "So how long am I going to be, right?" And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "When am I next up at bat?" Oh, she goes, "About 20, 30 minutes. So I'm going to go out with him, okay?" She says, "Well, we have your phone number. Yep, if we want you, we'll call you up." I said, "Okay." So I go there and I have my little bag with me and I take a laptop and I, show him. I said, "Here, why don't you read these?" I mean, we talk about stuff, but the phone rings. "Why don't you come in? We're ready for you in about 10 minutes." I said, "Okay." So I give him my laptop and I let him read my writings, right? And I basically, if you want to read anything, I'm on Google Docs, right? So a lot of people have, got a hold of me, and you want to talk to me personally, get a hold of me at the dudewake42 at Gmail, dudewake42 at Gmail, right? And if you want to send anything to my PayPal, that's dudewake42 at Gmail. I sure could use it. I right now have $9 in my checking account to last the next 18 days. So how could you do that? Hmm? Oh, people are writing. Let's see what people have to say. Hey, there's Jane. Hey, Jenny. Howdy, Sensei and crowd. Uh, uh, uh. So, Jane, have you been listening to what I've been talking about? Um, talking truth to power, right? And the real truth you should be talking is to yourself. If you cannot be the decider, I mean, you should not let other people decide for you, right? It's up to you, right? So, what do you think of that, Jane? Yes. So, um, so I've been telling, like what I've been up to for the summer. So he takes me to the thing, and I, go and get my eyes operated on, and he's reading my novels. And if you want to read my novels, basically, you know, email the dudewake42 at Gmail, dudewake42 at Gmail. If you want to send anything on PayPal, dudewake42 at Gmail. And if you're on Google Docs, not a problem. I just send it to you, bingo, bango, there it is. But if, let's say, you have another platform you're coming from, Microsoft or whatever other platform there are out there, and there are other people. So there are people say, "Oh, I'd love to read your stuff." I send it to them, and they say, "You've got me blocked." Well, I don't have you blocked. It's that you're not on Google Docs, and unless you tell me what platform you're on, I can pick the one you're on because automatically, if I just send it to somebody, bingo, goes in. But I never knew this because I get everybody's email. I mean, for some reason, the email part of it doesn't, that's like not Google Docs. You'd think so, but it doesn't. Anybody can email at the dudewake42 at Gmail, dudewake42 at Gmail, right? So that works. But me sending you a document, unless you're Google Docs, it doesn't go there unless you tell me what your platform, and then I can pick it and send it in that, right? So I did not know this because I'm a dummy when it comes to this kind of stuff until I sent a document to someone who said, "Oh, you know, I should have, I have Google Docs and you sent it to me in like Microsoft or whatever that other platform, And so he goes, just here, I'm emailing you now in Google Docs, send that stuff to this email address." So he did, he got it, right? So, but that was like, I've been sending documents to people for now 3 years, and that's the first guy who explained to me what it was, and I understood. He showed me how to do it. I did it. Bingo, bango, right? So That's the thing. You wanna read that stuff? If you're not in Google Docs, tell me what platform, and I'll do my best to send it to that. But I'm not dissing you or being mean to you or any of the other, our buddy in Australia or New Zealand, wherever he is down under. I sent him a whole bunch of stuff, and he got really upset. "You're blocking me!" Ah," and he just screamed and yelled at me, and I didn't understand what he's talking. I just kept sending him more stuff in Google Docs, and he just got more. And that's why we have war in the Ukraine, right? So this guy is doing this. He drives me back. He now becomes my best buddy. So he has to come and get me the next day to get unwrapped. And um, basically I knew the procedure, and so basically I had welding goggles with me, and as soon as we got into a darker space, you know, he got me home. I was in my little man cave. I unwrapped myself and put the goggles on, so those wild things I had, so it would protect my eyes, but I could still walk around and not kill myself. So, I got back, and the next day, they looked at me, and they said, "Okay, you're fine. Come back in another 20 days, and we'll look at them again, and then another 20 days." Anyway, so he and I become best of buddies, and he is head of the school department in one of the 3 counties, right? And so after talking and talking and stories and reading my stuff, you need to teach here, right? So he gets me into and he runs the place, and he tells the lady who's head of HR, fill out all I want him to, so I do. And basically what happens, and so there's about 2 weeks before um, we start school, that he takes me around to all the other schools and introduces me to all the other people, and I read their palms and get to know them, and so they kind of get to know me. And his favorite school is like, so most of that school district is in the big city, right? Which is not a big city. So it's a city of maybe 70,000. That's not a big city. It's a big town, right? But they consider there's a big university there. Anyway, so and he takes me to this little school that is his favorite. He likes, he thinks I do good there. But he basically said the only job I can give you is like temp, and you'll probably have to go to all the other schools. So after he drove me around, I realized that my car could not do this. But this little school is not that far from me. I could kind of maybe do this. And it would be tough because my phone doesn't work. So I'd have to go there almost all the time anyway. And anyway, so we're trying to work this out. So I'm getting to meet everybody and talk to everybody. And the powers that be haven't, because what's truly interesting is that even though this is a county school district, and the way in America schools are run are by those school districts, federal government gives them the state money, state gives them money, and that's how it's run. And it's all dependent on your real estate. So people who live in really ritzy neighborhoods have really ritzy schools. People who live in poor neighborhoods have really crappy schools. And this is a very rural, poor, 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 because the rich people who bought up all the property, they don't live here. So this ain't, they're not paying, they're paying certain amount of taxes, but they're not registered kind of here yet, right? They may do it sooner or later, but and they don't want to pay for anything that they don't use. Like around us, they didn't want to give the volunteer, the way our fire department works is that pretty much everyone gives the money all the time to take care of us. And the rich people who are, you know, upped, the heart attack, the car crashes, upped it up by 40%. And the rich people wouldn't give them any money because they said, even though these guys came and cut them out of a car and took them to the hospital, didn't give them any money. Had a heart attack, took them to the hospital, out because they closed the hospital, they took it to another county. And as more rich people got here, what they organized is that they have a private ambulance service that goes and gets them. All the rich people who join the private ambulance service have like a life alert thing that contacts those guys. They send the private ambulance that then takes it to this little airstrip that the private helicopter takes them to Duke or someplace like that faster than if they were in a county ambulance going to a county hospital. And the amazing thing is the federal government pays for that. So all the rich people go, like my brother, he goes, all those welfare mothers, all those people, we should not expand Medicaid for poor people. They should earn it. Well, my brother, he has had, I don't know, 20 different operations, replaced his kneecaps, his shoulder, his backbone, you name it. And it has cost the federal government $1 million. And I mean, that is the kind of separation. And what I see of this is the real issue is not politics or economics or technology or none of the above. It is this dynamic of separation of spirit, and that we have separated our spirit. There is the unconditional love of love's co-creation, and then there's the conditional love of ego, the illusion of our body. And that is what causes the war. That's why all this conflict and all of this stuff is going on. And there is a unipolar, people go, "Why? Yeah, yeah, you couldn't keep that secret." Well, they don't keep it secret. You see it right in front of us every day in every way. All this separation, all this nuttiness of why people hate each other. There's no reason to hate anybody. There's no reason to be selfish. So I have nothing, and I give it away. My best story of that is, I think it was last year or the year before. It was kind of winterish, but it was a really nice winter day, and my car was in fair I mean, it had this car has been having, it's old. I got almost 200 and something miles on it, 200,000 something miles on it. Anyway, I was in Boone, and I have a great, my two I have favorite I go to Walmarts to buy certain things because they always have them, and it's really they have these great English muffins they still are $1.19. With all the inflation, they still are. The Thomas's that used to be 2.20 are now $5, but not anyway. And they have the cream cheese still 72 cents a packet, right? Butter still $2 for 4 sticks, right? Eggs are a little bit high, but not if you what I don't understand, all the other eggs are pretty high, but if you buy 18 of super, the really big white eggs that are like this, it's $1.83 for 18, whereas 18 of the regular eggs is 2.50. So I shop like that. And on the other side of the parking lot is um Food Lion, and they have constantly 20 pounds of chicken legs for $5 still, right? Everything else has gone through the roof, but that's still that, and they have other things like that. So that's how I shop. And the other 2 stores I go is to the Dollar Tree and Harris Teeter's. Harris Teeter, really super duper whoop-de-doo, rich people place, right? What they do is all their vegetables, when they start looking a little punky, instead of throwing them away, they put them out on these roller trays. And that eggplant, the one over there, that is $2, right? The one that's in a plastic bag and a little punky is 89 cents, right? So I buy my vegetables at Harris Teeter. Not always whatever they got is what I buy. So, and then you got to kind of eat it quick. Same with the chicken legs. So I have to cook that stuff up first. And once you cook it, it lasts another 2 weeks because I don't really have refrigeration, right? But I'm on top of a mountain. I have what is known as an ice box, meaning a box in the ground that's not in the sun under the trees, right? And there's water everywhere, so it's 40 degrees, right? So anyway, um, I'm coming out of my Dollar Tree, and I bought something with a $10 bill, and all I have left is a $5 bill, a $1 bill, and about 30 cents, right? So I'm coming out, and The Dollar Tree is the homeless people central because they have this freezer in the back and you can buy frozen food for $1, right? And the big fave of most homeless people is packets of hot dogs because they're already cooked and they got so many chemicals in them. You could put them in the sun for a year and you could, they'd be warmed up. They'd be all good. They never rot, right? Anyway, so I'm coming out and there's this definite homeless guy and it's there's the only like little bench in the whole city of Boone is in front of or between this restaurant and the Dollar Tree. And the lady who's the manager of the Dollar Tree and the restaurant guy have been there before, and so they put these big concrete benches that I think the city threw out because they didn't want homeless people. Boone used to have a lot of nice places to sit. Now you can't. But this is on their property. They can do whatever the heck. They put these. So that's where a congregation of homeless folk are kind of always there, and they kind of spare change and all the rest. And the restaurant guy and the tree person and the Harris Teeter manager, all three had been there before, and so they just kind of turn a blind eye. So I come out, and there's only one guy, and he's he's got his whole pack, he's got his all his everything. I go, I'm gonna give this guy, and I'm looking at the $5 bill and the $1 bill. Which am I gonna give to this guy? If I give him the $5, I have the $1.30 for about a week and a half till I get my Social Security check. And $5, and I go, so what more could I get with a $5 than that? And they're both like useless. So I go, hey, buddy, here, this is for you. And he looks at me, and I'm just kind of like a homeless guy. And he goes, no, 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 you need that. And I go, no, no, I want you to have it. And then we do this, no, no, you need to have it. No, no, no. And so he goes, and he quotes the Bible where it's, part of the thing. And I think it's a part of the Quran, right? And there's a great deal of the Bible in the Quran. Of course, most Christians won't, tell you that. A lot of Jews will, because they're a little more knowledgeable about the book than Christians are. Anyway, and I sure would wish Christians could. Boy, a cold front is coming in because it dropped in temperature about 5 degrees in the last minute or two. So that means, we're going to have good weather for another couple days. A little cooler. Like I said, today's the last day of summer. So it's like a light switch. Where's this hat? Here's this hat. I'm going to put this hat on. Okay. You put a hat on, 60% of the heat goes up the top of your head. So anyway, I could put the windows up, but I'm not going to. So anyway, I give him the $5, and he receives it, and he goes, "Why don't you sit down and we talk?" Because we have been doing this. No, you take it, I take it, and he keeps quoting the Bible, and I keep talking about Jesus, and so we do that. So he goes, "Well, you're pretty knowledgeable about theological matters." And I said, "I'm interested in it. I pursue it." He goes, "No, no, no. I can tell that you've been more than interested. You have an experience of it." And I'm thinking about it. I said, "Well, you're kind of right." I said, "Well," he goes, "You've died before." And I said, "How do you know that?" He goes, "Well, the way you talk. You have an experience of death and what's on the other side, and an appreciation of life." And we're starting to get into heavy stuff. And then he kind of opens up the pack of hot dogs and takes a hot dog out. And he's got this kind of, his hand is all dirty and who knows where that hand has been. And he's holding the hot dog to me. He says, "Here, I'd like, you can share my hot dogs." Instead of, handing me the pack, he takes a hot dog out and hands it to me. And in my head, I go through the whole thing about, we just did this little dance of the $5 and the $1, and he, it's like, okay, sure, no problem. So and we talk, and he offers me another one, he offers another one, and then all of a sudden, I feel this presence on my thigh. I look down, and there's a big dog, and he's looking up at me, and he's looking at that hot dog. I've just got my third a new hot dog from the dirty hand, and I'm looking at it, and he's just looking at me with a smile on his face, and he's kind of and his head isn't quite on my thigh, it's just hovering above it, and he's been drooling, so my leg is kind of moist. And so, I break off a little piece and put it over instead of him going, you know, because he's a homeless dog. I said, "Is this dog yours?" And no, no, he just showed up. And so he takes it and he puts it, he rolls his little tongue out and takes it on his tongue. I mean, it's like giving him sacrament, and he's rolling it around in his mouth and he's sucking on it and he's not like chopping on it. And his eyes are closed and they're fluttering in hot dog ecstasy, and he swallows. And I got another piece for him. All right, and then so I've broken it up into three little pieces and have given it to him. Right, and so the guy then you know offers me another hot dog, and I look down, and the pack that he's pulling out still is full of hot dogs. We had probably eaten 20 hot dogs together before the dog has shown up, and the pack of 10 has 9 in it, right? And I'm thinking, those are the fishes. This is it. So here's this dog, and so I take that one and I break it up into 3 pieces. I give him a piece, and I eat a piece. And I give him a third, and we do that, and we talk about all kinds of different things. And I realized that the homeless guy is Jesus and the dog is John the Baptist. And the homeless guy goes to me, "So you want that dog? The dog seems to like you." And I said, "Well, I'm a responsible guy. You know, you're a homeless guy. So am I, but I have a place to stay. But I couldn't really take care of that dog. I couldn't be responsible for that dog. And I'm a dog boy, and he goes, "Okay." And he looks at him. He goes, "Hey, bud, how you doing?" And the dog went from being my dog to like getting up and putting his head on Jesus's foot and going, "Yeah, I like you too." So I said, "I don't, you got a place, I got this place to stay. Do you need a place?" No, no, no. And he hasn't even seen my car, but he goes, "I don't know where we could fit." And he's right. I mean, there's nowhere really anybody can fit in my car. I mean, there's just this is a homeless guy's car, because a good deal of the time, when I'm not here and I'm on the bop, I live in this car. Even if I'm at the school, I'm living in the car because John can throw me out at any second. So. And when you're on the bop, you need to be on the bop. Even if you find a nice place to stay, you still don't move into that place. Your couch there. And the best way to get thrown out is like move all your stuff in. Yeah. So that was my little experience of of Jesus coming into my life in the physical sense, right? Because I'm always praying to him. And now, the dog is John the Baptist, and he's always by my side. So you know unconditional love in my heart, unconditional forgiveness in my consciousness, and John the Baptist always at my side. And so I had my eyes operated. I became best friends with the guy in charge of this county school system. And I'm now going, those 2 weeks before school opens, I go because I have nothing else to do. And he's working on this school, painting it, and he doesn't have contractors in. He saves that money to feed the kids. So anyway, and we go to other schools, and I'm meeting everyone. And what I am seeing is that this school system really has some pretty amazing teachers, because I would say 60% to 80%, depending on the school, those teachers went to that school. They went to that school, went to college, did something other place, got some money, came back because their parents were sick or whatever, and took over the business or took over the farm or did something like that. And now they are in their 40s, and they either sold that stuff and got a little money in the bank, or they had that really good job and they got retired early and got a little something coming in. And so now they're teaching at these schools, right? And so, and they aren't just, stuck in a ideological point of view. And of a teacher, and I call that the scholastic point of view. No, they're there for those kids, and most teachers are, but these guys really are there because they were those kids, right? And especially this one little school where it's like kindergarten up through ninth grade, right? That first year of high school is in that school, and they only have 120 through the kindergarten to ninth grade. I mean, this is a very interesting school. And because it's so isolated, it doesn't really get the effect of that scene, but they still, their whole community has been ravaged by COVID. Their whole community has been ravaged by OxyContin for the last 30 years. Um, the economy that their grandparents and parents actually made a pretty good living on was just decimated. And so they're every one of those kids, like, well, let's not everyone, let's say 60% or 70% of those kids, their parents are dead. And either their grandparents or their uncle or somebody like that is taking care of them. And they're on, and those people are only doing because the state is giving them money to do it. They're not doing it at the bottom of their heart or some familiar sense, but just because they're getting, you know, $300 a month, a week, to take care of that kid, and they're probably not even feeding the kid; they're spending money on themselves. And so, what I realized, and once the school opened, I started to meet these kids, um, and it wasn't just in that little school, but the other one. But the little school, because there were so few of them, the other schools had, somewhere between 200 and 500 kids in each of those schools. So it was hard to. And the guy who ran that school was the brother of my buddy, and so they're like two pots, and they're both really interesting guys. And so that guy, um, I read his palm. I read everyone who worked in the school that palms. They were like amazed. And the lady who is like the special ed school lady, and lady who's the math person, and virtually all of them were like, "Well, that's pretty interesting." They were like, "Oh, you're the devil," or "Oh," they were like had an open mind to it. And I explained how I did it, and they go, "Oh, wow." So, and pretty much all of them said, "Well, boss said that you might be working here, and that'd be great because." And I said, um, I'm watching all you guys, and I'm what I'm going to probably try and do is be your assistant. I'm going to do what you want, so you don't feel so stressed. Take up your slack. And so that was deemed a really good idea, not to me to take over a class or something, but to be the assistant of all these teachers. And they all liked that idea. And I talked to them all individually and got to know individually. And they really liked this new kind of component that, oh, yeah, this might work out pretty good. And the kids came, and basically the guy who ran it um, had me because this is a great school. Because if a kid needs to go to the bathroom, um, he can go to the bathroom. He doesn't need a hall pass. It's not like East Germany. And what's interesting is that so few kids, and it's kindergarten to ninth grade, they have kindergarten to like fourth grade, right? They got two of those, right? And then they got fourth grade to sixth grade. They got two of those. And then they got, seventh, eighth, and ninth. And they got three of those, right? And sometimes they have three of this, three of that. And they all kind of, and they teach all this, meaning the math lady teaches math to everybody, right? And they teacher that's taking care of kindergarten through you know, fourth grade, she teaches math too, but the math lady is like the math lady. And they have the science guy. No, they have the science lady. They have the history guy, the reading lady, and a few other things. And then they have these other teachers taking care of these groups. And what's really interesting is that so kindergarten to fourth grade. So it isn't like all the kindergartners over there, all the first graders there, no. They have groups, pods in each of these groups of kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, right? Together, right? And so the kids are actually helping teach, because this one teacher goes from pod to pod, so they have the, 3rd and 4th graders teaching the kindergarten, 1st grade how to, do their numbers and know their letters and reading words, and this works. That's how I teach, and these guys are doing that. Now the rest of the school system doesn't do that. Just this little school, it's like a little red schoolhouse, but it does have it does have pretty good facilities, right? Because the guy who runs that, his brother runs the whole thing, so they're not getting the short shift. So, I'm doing that, being the assistant, but the head office hasn't, like, given the big okay that because they would then pay me some money, which would be great. Then I could fix my car. Then I wouldn't have to say, "Hey, I need some money. Send me something on my PayPal. Due to wake 42 at Gmail. Due to wake 42 at Gmail." And people send me stuff too because you get a hold of me on the email. We start talking, and they, "Oh, what's your mailing address?" And I give it to them, and they send me stuff, which is very nice. That nice little exercise thing, and that was nice. Guy sent me some nice cards. That was nice. A couple bottles of wine. That's nice. I got diabetes. I don't really drink a lot of alcohol. But I mean, these are all nice. I like that. It's the whatchamacallit is more important than the thing. But money, cash, green energy. I could because then I could fix my car. But anyway, I digress. So they haven't really. So first 2 weeks, I'm kind of there, and I've kind of read everyone's palm, and they kind of they don't have everyone eat at the same time because their little cafeteria is small, can't fit all those people, can fit maybe 30, 40 people a month. So they have everything shifting around like it was a college, right? So basically, if I am not helping a teacher do something or take her some slack, like she needs to take her kid to the doctors instead of making it a big deal, I just kind of take up that slack, right? So everyone in that school is like, yeah, this is kind of cool. This is helping because their way of doing it was way different than anybody else. So I was fitting right in, and I wasn't trying to give anyone an ideological point of view, like any of anything, right? So what I did do is A, you know, fill the slot when they needed somebody to, but didn't take an "I'm your substitute." No, right? When I was, just there and, would okay, everybody knows what they're studying, working because I saw how they were doing this. And if I did take over a whole class because the teacher had to go do some things outside of school, I would say, "Okay, let's put all our seats the pods, let's make it a circle. Let's talk about what you're looking at right now. I want your individual opinions." And each of these classes were small. Each of these classes were no more than 20 kids, if that, right? And so, anyway, each of these, not the pods, but the kindergarten to 4th grade, that was no more than 20 kids, right? So anyway, that's how I would deal with that. And but the majority of the thing that these kids really, really enjoyed about me was majority of the time was either I was in the cafeteria, and because from the time they got there until the time they left, there was one of those groups was having something to eat, right? Not all of them, and could eat it relatively comfortably, not be squished or people screaming and yelling in a din. Is actually quite comfortable. And I would sit over at a table. One of they had like 10 tables that maybe 6 kids could sit at each, and I'd be over at a table and I had my laptop. And if nobody was wanted to, they had nice internet. I'd be doing stuff on that and be writing, things I'd be thinking about. Anyway, but they would come over either in groups or individuals and sit with me and have me read their palm again or for the first time. And that's when I would start talking more about doing your best, being your best. You know, because everybody's a Christian there, and that's everyone's white. I wasn't talking about anything geopolitical or political or even religious just about God's love, and I said, and within every religion, God is God, right? And that's how I again, there is no Jewish God, and we have our God, and there is no, it's all God, one God, right? And if you reading the book, pretty much that's what the book says. There's only one God, right? That's the Ten Commandments and one God, right? So we didn't even talk about it, but they would talk about how they individually felt, and I kept focusing on that they were the decider. They had to realize what their life was and how their life was, and what they were going to do with their life. And from kindergarten on, you had to not decide what you're going to do. You're going to be a doctor or this or that. No, but how you're going to live your life. You aren't your body, and you're not the job you have, and you're not, and that's how we would talk. And these kids responded to it like you could not believe. They understood what I was saying at 100%, and they were uh, being self reflective. Whereas all the teachers and all the people in the administration and all those guys who are really good, better than I'd ever seen in any other version of a scholastic institution, um, and who were trying to do their best to deal with what the kids needed more than what they had to check off on a box. It was pretty amazing, and I could tell just by looking at their clothes, their shoes, their pants, their this, their t-shirts, their everything. You could tell who was really poor. I could tell by their skin tone, by um, their bone structure, all of the, who was eating, who wasn't eating, all the above. Anyway, so those kids really liked to come to me, and so by, oh, 1 o'clock, from 1 to when, their parents either came pick them up or they got on the bus, they, basically was at the library, or they were at a class that was like someone would come in and try to teach them something outside the school, or they'd be in the gym shooting hoops, because this school was like generated basketball stars, because half the teachers who were teaching there had been a basketball star coming from that school, and then went to the high school and and then got to go to college, and basketball, unlike football, which takes a lot of money, basketball was the way out for all of these kids, and that's why Jews and blacks have made up the professional um, basketball arena, and poor kids, right? Basically, poor kids who had drive to do it. So these kids, they are shooting hoops. They are really amazing, and there's 3 or 4 teachers who are who are basketball players, who and they play with the kids, and I mean they it's like a street game. I mean, they 6 kids on one hoop, half the there's 4 hoops you can play at the same time in that school, and so from about, you know, 1:30ish till when the buses leave, that's what those kids are doing, right? And then when the other kids who aren't doing something someplace like at the library, or being talked to by somebody else, they'll come and play bombardment. So the last half an hour before those kids go home, they are really exerting themselves. And because the guys have been shooting hoops. They've been doing that for maybe an hour, and then everybody shows up, and the whole friggin' school. It's like, can 60 kids on one side of the line, 60 on the other, and maybe 20 balls, and they are going at, and these kids have been doing it their whole friggin' school life, so they're throwing that ball like it was a baseball, and the first time I saw them do this, it was like war. It was unbelievable. These guys were vicious. And so I'm the lady who's the special ed student, and she's somewhat of a psychologist, but she's not. She's special ed, right? The psychologist comes in every now and then. And there are a lot of people who come in now and then, right? So I I watch. So she's on one side of me, and the guy who's head of everything, and the history guy, and that I call him the math lady, the science lady, the history guy, um, the head guy, the lady who is the head secretary. Well, she's the only secretary. She basically runs the school. She orders everything, pays, does all the paperwork. Anyway, we're all leaning against the wall watching this guy out, and I just like warp. I said, I can't even watch this. Anyway, I said, I understand why you're doing this because by the time they leave to go home, they have just used every ounce of their ATP molecules, and they won't be upset. Nothing will bother them. They'll go to sleep even if they haven't had a meal, and they'll be ready and wanting to come back to school. And they all kind of shake. Yep, you're smart. There's other people couldn't understand why the last 2.5 hours of school, these kids weren't in a classroom with a book in their nose taking a test. Because there are a lot of people coming from the state coming to this school, like I said, people who visit, who are well, this is costing us money. We're just gonna close this down and force the kids to get on a bus and go an hour, you know, wake up even earlier. Instead of waking up at 6 in the morning, they'll have to wake up at 4 in the morning to go to school in the city. Anyway, so and as long as those teachers are there, that'll never happen. But they're all getting old. They're all in their 50s and 60s, right? So anyway, so the head guy who you know the brother of my friend, he is a they're all basketballs. Even the two girls were basketball stars from that place, and that's how they got to go to college. Anyway, they pick up a basketball, right? And they bounce it on the floor, right? And then put it in my hands. And basketball's hard. It's like, and then they take the bombardment ball, right? And it says bombardment on it. And it has this picture of like it's a a ball coming out of a cannonball, right? And they bounce it on the floor, and it bounces up like twice as high as the basketball, right? They put it in my hands, and it's like a marshmallow, right? And then the head guy goes, "Stand over there." So I stand over there. He goes, "I'm going to throw this at your head." And he winds up and he throws it like a baseball, and it hits my head, and it is like a marshmallow. It kind of covers around my head and then falls to the ground. And nothing got hurt. I look, there's a window, I look, and there's nothing broken, no blood. I said, wow, because that's why we can let these kids be this way, because they can take all of their aggression out. And that kid who said something, they said, well, they can whack them upside the head with this ball. It won't hurt them 1 ounce. And anyway, these guys are like brilliant. If every school system was like this, we'd have a great, you know, there wouldn't be every child being left behind, right? So that was the first week of all of this, right? And I fit in really nice, and then the next week, a whole bunch of people come from the state and from the higher ups, and I can see them talking about me, right? And they come and talk to me. I read their palms, and you know, I get more out of who they are than who I am. And I explain them. I said, "This is what I do here." And they said, "Well, you put in your thing and you put all these universities we were at, and we kind of checked you out, and half of them said, yeah, you were kind of there, but you were working for somebody else, and no one knew it. Yeah, you did that. You were head of this study, so you had to have." They were expecting that you had to have a PhD, but they never, because they weren't paying for it, And then we go and look at all the, and yeah, you got a lot of hours and a lot of credits and a lot of this, but you've never really, yes, you got a couple of these um, degrees, and they're from really prestigious universities, but we can't figure out how you got them. So we don't know. We don't think. Now you can come here and visit because you really seem to fit in here, and our other schools seem to like you. We don't get any complaints, but um, you can't really be here. but you can come and visit. We like the fact you can. Everyone likes you, and everyone thinks you fit. You have this little niche that needs to be filled, but we can't give you any money. Sorry. So the head guy, who's still my good buddy, says, the problem with it is that you've only been here a week, and you've had this, and you've really only been in this one school. You've gone to the other two schools, but you've only been there each one about a day or and a half, and you've made a big effect, a really positive effect. And the problem is that positive effect goes straight up against the power structure. Um, Everyone in this county administration, except for the HR lady, because she's straight from the capital. She's her paycheck comes from the capital, not from us. She's not one of us, but she runs HR, right? And and she again, she wasn't like, oh, he's terrible. He's the devil. She was just that you weren't you didn't fit you seemed to you found your own niche in this place, but you don't there wasn't a single box she could check, and she couldn't check yes or no, or he's terrible, he's good. It was like when she had her little piece of paper of all the boxes she had to check, it was like, yes, he had this, driver's license, this was where he lived, blah 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 blah. Yes, those checks, but the other ones, they couldn't I fit into a whole 'nother category that they didn't have a box for, and that's what and the fact that I fit in, that I found my niche so well, and the state, I spent another week there, and they basically studied kind of what we were doing, and they did this one study with these kids, and basically the teachers knew not to question it or even just drop the kids off and they would be tested, right? Well, I went in there and watched first they brought in all these guys who had no credentials whatsoever. They were like in grad school, and they were just monkeys, right? To do the job. And they were sitting there and the kids hadn't come in, and I basically interviewed each one of them, right? And they had these piles of instructions for those people on how to give the test, right? And then I couldn't read it, the way I would, you know, take it apart in reading it. I just scanned it, but it was a test to see how violent, or how to manifest a violent response. What manifests a violent response from these guys, and what are they talking about, right? Why don't we give a test on how to manifest compassion, understanding, empathy, and forgiveness? You know, they're looking for the triggers for trigger people, right? So anyway, so these the stuff. This one person comes in and puts the stuff on the table. Those people who are going to give the test hadn't shown up yet. So I'm like, first I read the instructions for the people because the people don't even know what they're doing because they're instructions on how to give the test, right? And then, and on the back part of the instructions on how to give a test is a test for them, 2 pages, right? One before they give the test, and the second after they gave the test on how they gave the test and what they first thought after reading the instruction what the test was, right? And then I read what the test is, and it's a thing to look at what the trigger for violence is, right? So not how to stop it, not how to you know build empathy, love, you know, forgiveness. No. So and that's what these kids are. They are love, forgiveness, empathy. Because man, they can empathize because all these kids, even you can tell some kids have really nice shoes, nice pants, nice shirt. So their parents have more money, obviously, right? And they're a little chunkier, and so they're eating better because there were a lot of kids there who were not eating. I mean, they showed signs of, when you have, when you are in fifth grade when your bones should really be taking off and they're not. And you seem to have had rickets. Anyway, and I see everything, you know, and where most people see nothing. So, and that's why these kids love me because I don't tell them what to think or what to do or anything. I just give a open, ask a few questions and I let them talk to me, tell me how they feel, what's going on in their life, right? And they all, even the ones who have nice shoes and nice kicks and their parents, ignore them. They're too busy at work. They never get to get any kind of familiar anything. Yeah, they got their own bedroom. Yeah, they got this. Yeah, they got that. They got a nice, they got an iPhone. Yes, they have, a nice, video game console. But they say, the only real attention I get is when I love coming to school. And I love my fellow students because we are actually friends, and I try not to wear, my best fancy, my parents keep buying me new stuff and I keep wearing the oldest. I mean, these kids are awake. So I'm sitting in the cafeteria, the small cafeteria, and the cafeteria lady likes me because she makes a really good meal, but most of the kids they got a choice of having the vegetables, the soup, the this, the salad, or, taco chips and cheese, and she can't make them get stuff, and she throws a few vegetables or a few this or that onto, in the cheese mix, so they have to navigate the vegetables. But anyway, so I eat everything she's got and take stuff home, and everybody comes and talks to me, the janitor staff, you name it, they all come and talk to me. And we talk about the kids and how to make the school better and et cetera. And they all work there because it's there for the kids. So I'm there one day and they're working on a project and they don't have art, but the math teacher, the two math teacher and the science, math lady, science lady, and the history guy, they have them do art about their subjects, and then they put them up on the walls, and the walls are white, 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 not this pea vomit green, but whiter than white, and they have the lighting, so it's like an art so all of their halls, and it's a big, long building with about, you know, 5 big classrooms on each side, right? And so it's the science classroom, the computer classroom, the this classroom, that. So and the gym and the cafeteria at the other end. And so, um, all these teachers have them make art on big pieces of paper, and then they laminate it and stick it on the wall, right? And they change it every year. I mean, not every year, like every 2 or 3 weeks, right? And the kids get to do everything. The only thing the grown-ups do is, go take all the kids. They get a piece of, like, construction paper that comes on a roll. They take everyone's art, and they put it on that, and then they roll it up so it doesn't get crinkly, and then the grown-ups take it to this place that laminates the whole thing, right? And I think it's not the staple place, I think it's a factory that does this, somewhere in the neighborhood, and these people either know the school system and know these people, and so they probably do it for free, right? So and so then the kids cut the laminated stuff up and then glue it to the wall, and they figure out how to which ones are going to go together and how to tell whatever story. And they make the art, they tell it, and it's like they're getting ready to go work for Vogue. When I worked in in magazines, I used to. Um, and a number of what we call back in the day in the 70s and 80s, we called them zines. And so these kids are doing that, right? And what's really interesting, I don't know where they get this, I didn't see it done, but every time, so every 2 weeks, they change all of that. And so someone, either a teacher or the kids, I didn't see the process, but they put it together, and they have a machine that punches the holes through it, and then they put e something to hold it all together, so it's a book. And so they have all these books in the library of all of these things that they've I've been probably been doing this now for 5, 8, 10 years, not forever, the school has been there forever, but for a long time, and, anyway, so I'm sitting in the cafeteria, and this, ninth grader who's, and everyone comes to her like she's mom of the school. She's taking care of, people have an argument. They don't go to a teacher, they go to her. And she's got a crew of about um 10 girlfriends that you go do this, you go do that, and they go do, she's the administrator. And anyway, so she's always there doing something of that nature, right? And she keeps all those kids in line. So the teachers are never, you know, being the authority. She's the top dog. She's got these 10 other girls and about 5 guys who are the male a part of that, and they're buds, right? And what's truly interesting is they don't have sex isn't coming into their mind. They're like a family, brothers and sisters, and they're just really tight with each other, friends, and they have what Plato would call a platonic love because they're always hugging each other. They always got their arms around each other. They never freaking fight. The only time you see any violence is when they're playing bombardment and they're out to kill you, right? And so, even though I got hit in the head with the bombardment, one time towards the end, um, you know, the guys who's the brother of my friend, they're both two peas in the pod. They're both, they're always giggling, they're always pulling pranks. So they said, okay, Al's gonna play, he's gonna be on this team, I'm gonna be on the other team. Okay. And so he's gotten everyone, we're playing and I am basically I am the dodge of the dodgeball. And there's just two girls that are just killer. I said, I'm gonna be, I'm just have them, throw at me and you be there and catch the ball. That'll be our I can't throw it. I can barely see, I can barely walk, but I can get out of the way. And so that was our little strategy. And so there's 3 girls back there and they are killer because I would dodge it, they get it. The other people, half the people didn't even see them behind me. They would come whipping around and they could be looking over there and hit a person over there. So doing pretty good. And at a certain point, I am dodging, but there's nobody behind me, and everybody on the other side has a ball, and they, you know, 20 balls get shucked at me, and boom, boom, bang, boom, boom, and there's no way of me dodging. Bang, boom, bing, bing, bang, bing, boom, bang, boom, and after it, at a certain point, I just stopped like ducking and trying to dodge. I just let them hit me, letting go, right? And so after, for a good, I don't know, it felt like forever, but maybe 2 minutes. I just was letting them whack the crap out of me, and then everyone stopped because it wasn't fun anymore. And, you know, my buddy said, "So why did it was fun when you were trying to dodge. Why did you?" I said, "I was letting go." I said, "I've been talking to all of you guys about letting go. I just was the perfect example of it." And then they picked the balls up and whacked the crap out of me again, and I ran away. But that was my real okay. This ball is amazing. It's not going to hurt these kids. So they give the kids an outlet of that energy that they can't get hurt, and so there is no kid there who's a trigger person who's going to cause some harm. But in that latter part of each of the, I guess I was there for about 6 days over a 2 week period, and um the last 3 days, a lot of kids knew it before me that I wasn't gonna be there that longer, and a number of them said, "We really like you, and we wish you could stay." I said, "Well, I'm gonna stay." They go, "No." I mean, before I was told that I wasn't that I could come and visit. They said, "No." And I said, "This one kid," and he was like in the 5th grade. Little shrimp of a guy, reminded me of me. He said to me, he goes, you're we love our school and we love each other, and this is the safest, best place we could ever be, right? And if we could stay here for the rest of our lives, it would be great. But you were giving us a little vision of how we could take this out into that world that we don't want to go in, and they're going to take you away from us. And so we're not, you know, we'd rather have you leave sooner than later, because we really like you, but we don't want to, really let you into our hearts, right? We'd much rather have the memory of Al, and that we could. And this is this little kid. I didn't get this from everyone. I got this from this guy who's in 4th grade, and he's giving me this sage thing. He goes, so that's I don't know if you realize this. I said, well, I had inklings, right? And he said, well, and then he said, but you can still come back and visit. I said, I am going to, right? And so I haven't been there since last week. And so I wasn't here this whole week. So I'm thinking, depending on the weather and how I feel physically, I will go tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday. Right? Because I've done all the things I had on my eye surgery, this surgery, that I really have, and I've pretty much um, done everything I need to do, getting ready for winter. I started them. Did the biggest thing of doing anything is starting, and so I started them, and so um, so it's like a glide, right? And so that's how I'm gonna spend the next 90 days, is gliding into winter, right? Because trees haven't even turned colors yet, so they don't turn color now. That means, October is in about a week, right? So that means, it's I'm just going to stay home, write and read, pray, and maybe once a week go visit the school. That's about, I think, my plan. And then something will come into my and a number of people have told me that, Al, something really good. And so the two brothers have taken me to other places, like, the rich people coming and starting things, and they have, they wanted me to be their beachhead, to try and get those really rich people to get involved in the school system, so the kids would have an outlet into that world. And so they've sent me as their St. Patrick to go into those worlds. And I was, given, I just didn't show up. The head of that school department said, "Hey, we had this guy. He's going to come visit you and talk to you about, find out what you want to do. And you're putting a lot of money in our community, and he's going to be sent to you to see how you can, how we can help you in the community, and how you can help us in the community." And so I've gone to 3 of those, and they were hoping that I might get a job with those guys, right? No, because these guys, they have exploitive, motif. They're just coming here to take things out of here, not to put anything into it, right? I mean, it's one place, but there was a thing called, it's like a conference kind of center, but it never took off. It's out in the middle of nowhere, right? But it's beautiful, got amazing view of this and that, and and it fell into disrepair, and some rich guy from Texas basically bought it for a nickel. And he not only bought that place, but he bought the gas station down the road, and he not only bought that, but the garage that was going to be the new volunteer fire department. But our volunteer fire department went out of business because they were getting too much business from the rich people's needs, and the rich people weren't you know, giving him any money. Like, basically that's they would have these drives that they'd stand on the side of the road with a boot from the fireman's boot, drove by, you put a few nickels, and that was like And if you had some extra money and they like, saved your life, you might give them $20 on Christmas time. They had 3 or 4 other drives more like that. And the rich guys were using them up uh, between heart attacks and terrible car crashes that these rich people had, because they couldn't drive on these roads that they were destroying by having all this heavy equipment on the road to build all these houses that they don't even live in. They just write it off their taxes. They are so rich that they buy, borrow, and die. That's the logo of Mr. Hathaway there, uh, of the big investment firm, um, Warren Buffett. I mean, that's his. He's got to put it on his tombstone: buy, borrow, die, because then you don't have to pay any taxes. You can have tons of money, and you can have all of these assets that don't get taxed because we only get taxed on our labor. Oop, oop, oop. Who's calling in? Oh, look, it's the bartender. Hey, buddy. Hey, are you there?
Yeah,
Okay. Did you get my? Did you see that I called you?
I saw that you called. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So here it is, the last day of summer,
Yeah.
and so we're heading into fall. And I thought I can't come visit you. I have no money for gas. My car, I need struts. I only go out when I physically have to go see a doctor or something. But you could come and visit. I'm gonna, you know, who knows whether how long I'll be here, but it would be nice if you visited. And if you don't, that's fine. That's cool. But every time of a change of season, it's always. And if you wanted to bring friends and we could have a party, that would be fun. Um, so that's all I was really calling you for. See how you're doing. I'm doing pretty good. Um, you know, I get older every day. I get more creaky. Um, and but it's all good. Winter should be interesting. I won't be. I have no idea what I'm going to do for winter. Um, I have no heat really, and
You're going out.
what? Can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening with you? What are you up to?
Everything's beautiful, other than a little flu that I'm battling at the moment.
Oh,
A little
okay.
flu and back pain, but it's my turn. I realize. So yeah, the last few days have been like that. So I'm just muscling through at work. Had a couple drinks after, and try to keep away and let everybody know that I'm sick.
Right. Well,
But yeah, it's just one of those. It's my time to deal with that. But otherwise, everything's been really gorgeous. And the first day of fall, I felt tremendously today.
yeah, yeah.
I hugged trees. A leaf flew right into my hand at the outside bar when we were talking about the first day of fall. I mean, I love this. I love fall, and I'm just into this whole change that you said at the very beginning.
Right. Yep. Yep.
That's where I'm at, in spite of a little something I'm dealing with.
Well, the thing about being sick is that it gives you the space to appreciate being well.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's part of. I definitely got a lot of that, and I've been very grateful for all of that. And I thank God for my health every day. So, I'm just looking at, like you like to say, what can I learn from this? I'm doing that, and I'm telling everybody it's really funny to watch, and they're just like I was before. I say we're in the middle of the conversation. They say, "Oh, you're growing your hair out," and I don't want to tell everybody I'm sick. I don't. I want to tell them to keep their distance if they want to hug me, but I don't want to wear it as a fucking badge like so many people do.
Uh-huh.
So I'm trying to tell you just to tell you my woes. But when everyone who did finally say something about something else, and I said, "Well, I didn't shave because I'm going through an achy sickness," and all they do is stand back and are afraid of me, and the conversation stops. Nobody even then says, "Oh, how are you? Oh, you came into work. Oh, how thank you," because nobody else. Everyone looks for a reason to not. But they don't say that. They just are scared right away. And I know that's how I was, and that's part of what I'm learning from this. Also, it's like a prejudice against me now that I showed up for work, which nobody else does when they're sick. But you're not going to tell me to go home because you can't replace me, and you don't want to do it yourself. But you don't want to be near me, and you're sort of pissed that I came in anyway. Like, just tell me to go home. I'm not asking to go home. I'll muscle through it. And I had the best attitude there, even every day, even though I'm sick and feeling pain and could barely walk. And that's part of what I'm learning from it. And I'm not mad about it. I just know I was them.
Right.
And I hope that in the future, if someone tells me they're sick, I won't back away first. I'll say, "How are you? And what can I do for you?" And I'll take your place so you can go home instead of just being fearful and avoiding me the rest of the day.
Yes. Right. If the rest of the human race would do that, we'd have no problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you ever you know, go get involved with the college that's right across the street from you?
I am working on Leeds McRae. I do believe it will be my future probably next year.
Uh-huh.
I followed the path, partly what you said, and then the books that I read that I was led to in between. It's been gorgeous
Right. Right.
to where I went over there. Like when you said to me, you should make a syllabus. The next book I bought after meeting seeing the guru up there, Guru Dev, and the Native American, that guy came up. Actually, no, he's a Hindu guy.
Right.
Came up, and I got to see the Beach Boys and Paul McCartney in this circle of completing the dots, if you will, of and going up to Mount to Heavenly Mountain,
Right.
and all this stuff happened. And then I come back from what's called the Art of Living Center in Heavenly Mountain, and I just a gorgeous day. It was all Indians and of us Americans, and you felt the love. And this guy, it was like meeting the Pope, if you will, and just this all magical thing, and song and chanting and beautiful stuff. And then I go after that, glowing from the experience. I go down to the library in Boone to see my friend Sai, my Buddhist buddy, and I look up happiness in the catalog, which I tend to do now. And the first book I go to in that section jumps out at me, and it says happiness, the art of living. I just left the Art of Living Center, and it says the art of living with joy, confidence, and peace. And I knew that was meant to be. And I took that book home,
Uh-huh.
and I'm in the first quarter of the book, and he says I to teach a happiness course, and I put together a syllabus and writing my
Yep.
syllabus.
So
yes.
that's going to be your course, happiness. That's
Yes.
good.
Yep.
Yep. That's good. So where is the happiness center or the place you went to?
The place I went to is Heavenly Mountain,
Heavenly
and that's the retreat. The Art of Living Center was built, this retreat, all these years ago for that guru, and it was meant to be because it's such a spiritual place. And I think that piece of ore that goes under you goes under there too. I mean, there's beautiful, magical stuff up there, and it's the most gorgeous site, and it's one of the biggest temples you'll ever see that was built.
Where is it? Where is it?
Between Boone and Blowing Rock, so it's only like 45 minutes from me.
On 421?
Yeah, what's that?
On 421?
No, you got to get off the road. You got to go back behind the Boone Golf Course and go up on Deerfield Road.
Okay.
It's a little tricky to find, but once you find it, yeah.
Can you take me one day?
I would love to, yes. Yeah. One day, yes, I would love to take you there.
Before winter comes, in the next few weeks, before winter comes, I would love you to take me up there.
I will try to. Like I said, my life is upside down right now, and I'm going with the flow of it. But yeah, I would love to. I definitely don't want to see you. Things come up. But yeah, just wonderful things being led on that journey of teaching happiness. That's my purpose.
Well, I could really use you to come and get me and take me to that place, because I think that may be a good place for me to stay the winter.
Yeah, it could be.
So, yeah, whenever you could, before winter though, in the next few weeks, if you could come and get me. And it's only magic that I'm making this phone call was meant to be. So what else have you learned in the last for the summer? What have been your big epiphanies this summer?
Well, it's definitely ironed out my course in life, which is still, always moving, but I knew that teaching was a part of it. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do that. I know the book is part of it, that I'm halfway to 3/4 through. But I knew that it was time. I knew that I was, it's stagnating. You don't want to say, because I know I'm moving more than the average person, but still for me, I was like, okay, you got to take that next step. And you were part of that inspiration for that. And so definitely knowing that the way this book was led, I spoke to the author of that book as well. His name is Douglas A. Smith, and he lives up in, he teaches the happiness course. So we spent an hour on the phone where he was guiding me and mentoring me on how to teach this course. He's about 68. And he got spiritually awakened when he was diagnosed with cancer. That could have been, only a couple of years. He's been around for 15 now. And just so I was learning that just if you wait, but you know when to take action. And I'm reading the book Conversations with God, which you probably brought up. Somebody gave it to me in the perfect time. And I was already finding that I could hear God's voice within me. But now I really know it. I know it before it comes because it's within us. But there's times where now, if I ask, I go to my car, I might smoke a bowl, and even if it's just a simple little question, which usually I can handle myself, but I just think, well, what should I do? And the answer comes resounding through God, and this book is confirming that. Plus, the way it all happened with this guy Douglas Smith, I know what I'm meant to do, and so I've not only put the syllabus together and know that it's going to be in the next year till I could teach at one of the colleges, but in the meantime, I will teach it wherever I can.
Yeah,
And
day
so
to
that could be
day.
a school,
Yep.
that could be the library. Somebody have now have come to me and said, "Oh, the Avery County Library has these little things where people come in for the day," and so I've already got an hour course I could do pretty much tomorrow, and then so I know that it's getting out there and it's showing the universe as much as I can when it's time. That this is what I'm meant to do, and people already know that I'm the happiest guy they know. So now it's not. I'm learning on how not to brag about that or not to make them feel bad about it. To wait for the right to just say something that later they come back to me and say, you were right about this, or you would appreciate this. So that's all part of the process of learning how to impart this without pushing it, and how to
Are you gone?
working through me and my purpose, that I'm right on my path.
You're right on your path. So,
Absolutely.
did I ever talk to you about your 20 and your 360?
I'm not sure.
Well, when you're out driving your big rig and over the CB, you'll hear, "Hey, good buddy, what's your 20?" And what they're asking is, "Where
Where are
are
you?
you? Where are you this minute? Like what mile marker are you passing?" Right? That's what your
Right.
20 is, right?
What's your 20? Yep.
And in life, knowing your 20, pretty much all through your life, because you're only really here in this moment, right?
Yep.
So you're either going to step before your 20 or after it or right on your 20, right? And when we have the experience of deja vu, that is our higher self saying, "Hey, this is what stepping on your 20 is like." Right?
Yeah, yes. So I understand what you're saying. I think so. My perspective on that is, this is a mistake you've made before, almost, or you've been here before. Are you going to make the right choice now? Kind of like Groundhog Day, or what can you do to move you forward as opposed to backwards?
Well,
And
that's but in the higher sense is more being prepared, not so much mistake or not mistake or this or that, but more the in every day in every way serving love's co-creation by doing your best in that moment,
in that moment, yes, sir.
because
Yep.
that's all you have is that moment, right? So that is manifesting being in your 20, right?
Being
Not
in your
not
20.
not saying, "Oh, I made a mistake," or that is almost, it's not a waste of time, but practicing to being doing not practicing, but doing your best, but knowing that you're not perfect, because that's what screws a lot. I have to be perfect. I have to be
Yeah, yeah,
perfect.
yeah. I'm over that. Yeah,
Right,
for
right,
sure.
all right. So you do your best in the moment, and you will feel being in your 20. And that's when God is right there with you, right with you. Your God's foot is in your foot, and you're stepping right where you're supposed to step, right? Now, a good tool to help you do that is to know your 360. And that is, in the military term, that is knowing your
Everything
situational,
around you.
yeah, what's around you. And you see the shit a quarter mile away. And
Yes.
so you're either prepared for it or you get out of the way. So if you
Yeah.
can do those things organically, right? And again, when you know your 360 and you feel it, you're not just like anxiously worrying about it, looking at every direction. That's when you won't see it coming. But
Right.
when you are doing your best to be in your 20, and you're stepping in that spot along with God, part of that is knowing your 360. So you know everything that's around you and what's coming at you.
What's coming in there? Yep. That's what's been
And
happening for
like
me.
I said, you can either be prepared for it or um, you know, be out of harm's way. You're just not there. And
Yep.
being in New York City, being on the street, that was something I did. I got a lot of practice out of that. And having a business where I had employees, being an electrician, like service oriented, not just pushing paper, I basically had to visualize that every day. So, have you ever read anything about Edgar Casey?
I don't know.
You know who he is?
I don't think so.
Well, they called him the sleeping prophet because he could prophesize unbelievable. And he's dead now. He died in the 20s or 30s, but he was so amazing, and he gave so many insights and prophecies over the years that someone started an institute in North Carolina or South Carolina on the coast, right? And it's Center for something or other. And so he would go to sleep. So when he was a kid, they called him a dummy. He did really poor in school, terrible, couldn't read, da da da. And so his parents would give him a hard time about this. So he's supposed to, read this book. So he couldn't read it. So he fell asleep and he put the book under his head. And when he woke up, he knew every word, page. He could spit it back to you, right? And so by that experience, he would write questions on a piece of paper and stick it under his pillow and go to sleep. And he would have an answer to. So people started to understand this. And he got married, and his wife was a smart person and said, we could do this as a service and a little business here. And so people who were really sick with cancer and everything under the sun, and this is in the beginning of the 20th century, the 20s, and he died in the 30s. And he had an amazing, like thousands of these things. And so, okay, you got cancer, what kind, put it under there. He could go into state like snap of a fingers, and he would see what kind of cancer it was. And then he would look at it in that manner, and then he'd wake up, and then he would go look in a medical book and see what they say about that cancer. He'd write it down on a piece of paper and a few questions and put it under the pillow, go back in the state, and he would get the answer of how to heal it, what to do, what to change in their life. And he had like a 99.9% success rate, right? And the medical folk got on his case about this, but he went and looked at all other kinds of stuff. And that's why that institute is there. And they try, instead of do, they try to teach people how to do this. And some people get it. And if you were to just, use your phone and ask Google Edgar Casey, what's his story, and see what Wikipedia has,
Yep.
I would say that you would get some good insights that you're not going to become Edgar Casey. You're not going to even go, you may go there and study, but you may not. But
Right.
by going to Google and Wikipedia, which is what they're really good for, it gives you this little, oh, I should think about that.
I'll check it out.
Right. So I think it would fit nicely into your thing of building a syllabus, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because by investigating his work would bring you into other people's work, and you could go from there with that.
Yep.
And so do me a favor, text me the guy's name and the phone number to that place.
The Art of Living Center?
Yeah.
Okay, I will.
Yeah. I mean, like the way that you got a hold of that guy, I'd like to talk to that guy.
Well, yeah, you can't necessarily get a hold of the guru guy.
No, but the guy you talked who wrote the book.
Oh, Douglas, that's different. Yeah, Douglas Smith.
Yeah, that's the guy I want to talk to.
Cool. Yeah, he's available. He's still doing well with his cancer. But here's the kind of one of the interesting things. And like I said, we spent an hour on that phone. It was really gorgeous. I happened to be in Kentucky with this lovely lady that I went to meet. Actually, we're in Tennessee in a little town, and it was a surreal day that I'm sitting out there with her while she's roaming around the park after our evening together, and then I'm on the phone with this guy who's helping me teach my happiness course, and it was gorgeous. And so we spoke, and we've been in touch since, and he sent me his syllabus, which I'm combining in ways with mine. His book is going to be a part of my, definitely a part of my class, but of course I have my own input on it as well. And so, yeah, he was more than willing to help, and he is not teaching right now because he has companies and other stuff he does. I think he's helping on a corporate level with people on this, which is needed as well.
Right.
But he wants to spread happiness just like me, one peace and happiness, and like you. And so he is not teaching at DePaul University now because he just can't go up there and teach with his immune system and with his cancer, although
Right.
he's kicking butt. So he's not even doing it. And one of it also he went to was Canyon Ranch, the famous spa out in many places, Colorado and in Arizona, that I applied to years ago as a student or when I was graduating because I knew it had a spiritual place as well as the fitness. So maybe who knows? I'm just the way your mind thinks. Like I could be doing that as well. Well, I'm going to hone my course for the next 6 months right here in town, and then I'll be ready, and the universe will be open to what I do next with that, and finish the book.
Especially because LM is right across the street from you. It's
Oh,
like
I know. No, that's where I meant to be. And I've just in that time since basically I've talked to a couple people there. Everyone, when I say I want to teach on course on happiness, and they already see the emanation from me, nobody has said anything negative. Everybody has said, "Wow, we really need that right now."
right.
And so that's it. So I've got nothing but open arms on it. Next year is the time for Lees McRae and somewhere else. Lees McRae is my number one because, yes, I live right here. I'm connected with that university. And in the meantime, I've just met people from students to pastors to everybody in that community. And it's just going in that right
Oh,
direction.
good,
Yeah.
good, good, good. See, that's why I suggested. I mean, I saw that was a place for you, especially that it's across the street from where you live.
Exactly. No, there's no doubt. And the epiphany I had with that also, and I don't know how much we talked about that, but when I ended up going to college, I ended up going to University of Florida, one university, and proud to be a Gator. And I left twice and came back and finished it. But I always wanted smaller college. I always wanted to be because of Scranton in my history, and my uncle Steve, who God bless him, he's still kind of a mess. He's doing it. He's still teaching there at 78, whatever, or 80. But I longed for that small college, and the same one that Mr. Rogers went to in Orlando that I used to just hang out at. This is the college I always wanted to go to. And now I'm going to get to teach outside, the outside classroom across from this gorgeous church
Right.
where I go and sit now. And that is in my future. And I'm not, it doesn't have to happen. I believe it will. But in the meantime, is just getting my cards in a row, if you will,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
doing what I'm supposed to do.
Prepare.
It's a
Being
beautiful time. Yeah.
and visualize. And this is why I spent the effort to tell you about your 20 and your 360.
Yep.
If you use that visualization of your 20, of you being at LM and doing that, you will.
Oh, I don't have any real doubt there. And then the part was also kind of relevant to what I've tried to explain to some people, but the awareness I'm given, and even though I'm in my moment as I am, I still know. And that is so weird to me, but that's exactly what you're talking about. And the premonitions and the mystical side is happening more and more. That I'm having these premonitions 10 minutes later. There's all this happening, and I know that I'm just connecting with the universe in such a beautiful way. I'm connecting with the deer. I'm connecting with the squirrels. I'm connecting with butterflies. When I was with that girl in Tennessee, and she's starting to feel that what's happening with me because I'm there for her as well during this time, and we're having a great time together. But I said, "Look at this butterfly. I'm going to call him over," and I go, and this butterfly just lands on my arm. And she witnessed that. And then more and more things are happening like that. And today we're all talking about the fall and just appreciating that day, even though I'm half sick. But I don't care. I'm sucking it up. I'm going to work and I'm going to do it. And I felt the energy. And I went up to a tree also next to the Jesus' tomb, which I go to. And I was going to go there just to say hello and thank you and maybe stretch my back out on the stone that's there. And I was pulled to this tree behind the church I've never been to. And there was this giant, beautiful tree next to the cemetery. And I went up. It was just drawn there. I was like, "Ooh, do I want to climb this tree? Because I felt that lately. Do I want to hang on it for my back?" And I just went and I stood up against it and put my whole body up against this tree. And the winds kicked up. I didn't realize till halfway through that it was miraculous. The winds kicked up. Acorns are falling. It was like God was so there. And then I was like halfway through, I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. This isn't exactly normal. This is amazing." And that happened. And then when I came back and worked, and I'm sitting outside and we're talking about the fall that I mentioned. And we're like, this is the first day of fall. And oh my God, isn't this miraculous and beautiful? And a breeze comes up and literally pushes this one leaf into my hand. And all I had to do was close my thumb and forefinger. And I have this leaf and it's in my phone right now.
So, I think I've talked to you about a thing called the Course in Miracles. Did I ever?
Yes. And that's come up a lot with Eckhart Tolle talks about it. He
Right.
mentioned it a couple days ago on his thing, and I know it. I've scanned through it. I haven't completely done it, but yes.
I'm sure it's on. I'm sure when you say scan through it, it's online. You can
I
study it
think
on.
that's what I did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, good. So
Which is the same way I did, by the way. I mean, I love reading, but as you know, as you get to this point, like you can't even keep up with the reading. But the like the other one I talk about a lot, the Four Agreements. I watched a 1 hour documentary of it. And it told me everything I need to know, and now I'll refresh, and it keeps coming up, of course, when I'm important. But I say it to people. I go, look, 10 Commandments is a lot. I'm giving you 4 agreements. If you can, come on, meet me halfway. It's less than halfway. The 4 agreements, and then my book, honestly, is going to be the 3. I'm not going to call it rules because I don't like rules myself. So I'm not going to call it 3 simple rules. I would have called it, but it's just hints for happiness.
I like that.
And the 3 major tenets is what I live by, and
hints for happiness. I like that.
That's it. Hints for happiness. I'm not telling you how to live.
Right.
I'm just giving you a hint. Look at me. Do I seem happier? And I do what you used to do, like what you do with your palm reading. And my thing is, and I probably said it to you, I know that I'm also, this was an epiphany that came in the last year or whatever, a happyologist will be on my card, like the minute it was on your card. That's what I am. I'm a happyologist. So I will talk to people, whether it's at the bar or whatever, and I go, hold on a second. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to write this down, and let's see how close I get or whatever. Just tell me right now how happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10. And I can tell you that my variance is 0.75 to 0.5, and I will call, and they will be, they're either shocked by how aware they are about how big that is. But I said to someone the other day, he goes, where are you? He goes, well, I'm between a 7 and an 8. I gave him the napkin. I wrote 7.5. I go, isn't that pretty much? He goes, well, yeah. And then he talks for a minute, and then later he comes back to me. He goes, that's pretty impressive what you did. I go, that's what I study. And the way you could conjure up and know somebody in that first few minutes, like we've talked about, is what I'm able to do with their happiness level. And of course, all I want is for you to be happier. If they ask me, I'm going to say, even today when I'm struggling this crap, I'm a 9 to a 10.5. I'm usually a 9.5. So I will say I dropped to 9 today. Nope, not many people would tell you I was miserable at work, and I showed it. I only told them if I felt they were going to be in danger of telling them, but otherwise I don't need to tell you that my back is killing me and I feel like shit and I was up all night with chills. I don't need to tell you that. I need to sing along and let you know that I'm happy no matter what, and I could deal with this. This is nothing. I am a warrior. And that was an epiphany that my other spiritual friend, and you can almost call him a spiritual guide to me, Andrew, I've talked about, called me like in the last 2 weeks. That was new. He said he's going through the biggest thing in his life. And that's where you know that somebody is really so spiritual and then literally an angel in your life, that he's dealing with the loss of his son from an OD. And after he told me about his spiritual epiphany and how he's going to be a drug counselor now, he's never done that before, but God has led him to. And he said, and then we have a little conversation about me, and he says, "You're a warrior for God. That's what you are. You're a warrior for God." And now the song "I Am the Warrior" has been on twice since, and the warrior thing comes up to me everywhere. And I'm like, yes. And The Peaceful Warrior was the second spiritual book I ever read by Dan Millman.
Right.
So that's another thing. The warrior
Yep.
for God, peaceful warrior for God. And then when I was at the football game in Michigan, the Big House, a week ago, which is probably where I got sick, but there was 110,000 people there and 50,000 in Detroit and all the airports. It just happened, whatever. But the Michigan played Hawaii, who lost badly and had almost no fans there. But their mascot in Hawaii is Rainbow Warrior, which is also quite beautiful.
So you're right there. WETSU. Do you get that on the radio?
I don't really. I'm not on the radio very much. But what's the channel? Is it a
89.5 on the FM dial? But it's their radio shows are put on the internet. You can go on the internet.
I got you.
WETSU. There is a New Dimensions is a radio show they have on Tuesdays that I think you might like.
Okay.
It's a very interesting spiritual. If you like Eckhart Tolle, you'll like this. It's very much like
that is, but
right.
Yeah.
So and the real dynamic of spiritual understanding, it's not really a war. It's an way of being. I mean, and Dan's book is more that, even though he's talking about being a warrior.
Well, that's why the peaceful part says that. I know. I mean, it's not a warrior, but it did happen that right when I came back and muscled through certain things, and then I come back and I get this bug, And it's like, I could easily call out of work, and I would have every
Right.
reason to, but I just don't. That's not how I go. I go and I show up and I muscle up. And everybody I talked to, like I said, one of them was Nicole, the chef, and she's got her paranoia. She's lovely, but I go in there and just put it out there for a couple managers. I'm not even asking to go home. I could use the money and I could suck it up, and I know I'll be fine. But I want you all to know that there's a certain risk involved. I tested and I was clean on the test. But I'm just going to do what I know is right to let you know. And if you choose to send me home, fine. And if you don't, then I'm going to just keep my distance from people as much as possible, and I'm going to do the job because that's my job, and that's what I'm meant to do right now. And that to me is kind of being a warrior. So I have no problem with the warrior thing. I know what you're saying, but it has come up many times since, and I'm going to embrace the peaceful warrior thing.
Right. Well, that is a great book. I really enjoyed that book.
Yeah, not only a great book, there was actually a movie eventually that came out, and I read it
Yeah.
over the years and bought it for people. It's one of those. And I read the second one and the third one. And then when I looked up, so this was just yesterday, as I'm in one of my sick days or 2 days ago, and looking at what I could watch that could, make it like a sick day, like when you're in school and embrace it, and you're here with your cats and you're in bed and there's not much you can do. You can barely move, but this. What can you learn and embrace this time? And then I went to see, actually, it was just on again, McEnroe, of all things, just popped up on Showtime, the documentary,
Yeah.
McEnroe. And he was an interesting character, and I love his documentary. It's great.
Right.
And then a little clip pops in as I'm watching McEnroe out of nowhere, and it's his wife, that Patty Smythe, singing "I Am the Warrior"
Right. Right.
right in my face, and I'm like, wow. And then the movie The Warriors came on right after that, and then when I looked up the movie The Warriors to see a certain character that I noticed was in both movies, The Warriors and in 48 Hours, and I look up the movie. There's another movie called Warriors, and Nick Nolte pops up, and he is the one who played Socrates in the Peaceful Warrior movie.
Well, there's 8 degrees, you and me and Mr. Bacon. So it's. I
Yeah.
mean, these are people call them coincidences or synchronicities. No, this is what life is about. And when you are in the flow, it is not a miracle. And the Course in Miracle is basically that. It gives. I mean, why I like it, it it gives you like 3 paragraphs to read every day, and it comes in so many different forms, right? The original form was this big textbook, and then a workbook for the student, and then a teacher's guide for the teacher, right?
Yeah.
And then they had one where it was all one big book, and then they had one that I liked, and I haven't ever found it again, but they had it like in flashcards. So instead
Oh
of
yeah.
taking the whole friggin' big book with you, you
Oh,
could
that's
just
wonderful. Yeah.
take one little card with you and you could read it all day long and think about it. And it would have the lesson, given, and then it would have the kind of insights for the student and the teacher. And I found that quite workable. And that gave me, and you may or may not use this in your little class, but I'm willing to share it with you. Part of your way you should do this is break things down into lessons of that nature so your students can think about it all. So let's say you have a class once a week, they can take that one little thing, and you can, I mean, since you're going to teach there, I'm sure they have places you can use a Xerox machine, etc., where you can put together a card like that. Everyone gets one, and they take it away from your class, and they don't have to read a textbook or anything. They look at that, they work on that for happiness, right? The less that one, that's the lesson of. And you may have, you said this, what'd you say, 3 hints for, or hint that instead of putting a number on it, just say hints for happiness, and this is one of those hints, right? And
Yep.
then you could take those hints from that class, and you need to document your class, right? Either videotape it or whatever. And I'm sure if you're doing it in that school, they have all kinds of ways to document it. And then turn that into part of what you would write a book about. Because you don't get any real respect within teaching anything unless you publish something. And for you, I see that this would be a good way for you to create um, a piece of work of that nature, right? And so, and then you mix in your own predilections of how you want to do it. But I think if you had this thing they could take away with them, just like on a little card, and that's the lesson that you talk about and work on every day. And depending on how many students, another good little insight I offer you is that let's say you have um, 20 students, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the class size in that
I mean,
school is.
20, 25, probably. Yeah, something like that.
Right. So let's just say 20 because, or 20, let's say 25.
Okay.
And you get them all to stand up in a straight line and have them count off to five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? There's one study group are the ones, the twos, the threes, the fours, the fives, and they take it away and make a community of themselves, of your class, of hints for happiness. And I think that would be a great name for the class too.
That's what I intend on. Yeah.
Yes. And so these people will be able to take what you give them and work it in a better way to a place where you will get more amazing feedback because if Plato said that the real relationship of student and teacher is one of a platonic, and that's where platonic love is the love of a student and teacher. And that's where the teacher learns as much from the student in a respectful way because they
Absolutely.
are, and that's why I always like using the term sensei because it's the Japanese word for teacher, but it's more than that because the sensei is used not just in grammar school or high school or college, but in
Right, kid.
every avenue. You're working in a factory, there'll be a guy who's the sensei who will teach you how to do your job better, not like show you and just throw you into the deep end, but will get because they realize when you have a relationship like that of teacher student of that kind of platonic love, the teaching is I mean that's what you and I are, right? I have that. That's why you call me sensei, or you stop calling me sensei. What do you call me? You call me uh,
Shaman.
shaman, right? And I'm more a sensei or griot because I tell stories,
Yep, yep.
and that is my tool of teaching. Is that now the shaman thing? Shaman gives the illusion of telling the future or reading something that no one else can, right? Well, basically, I read things that anybody could if they were to be patient and empathetic and looked deeper than the surface that most people do. So I'm more the sensei, and I mean shaman. You want to call me shaman, but that's really
I
only
heard that somewhere along the way, whether it was your buddy Randy, but that from the very beginning.
right,
And your card does say something about shamanic,
right.
but I talk
No,
about
no.
you
I
as a
mean,
shaman.
part of the shaman thing is so I am a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, right? And why that word shaman, shamanic, it's not shaman, shamanic. It is a world view. So my world view is shamanic, right? So I look at everything, and the shamanic world view is all our relations. It's everything, right? And we're looking how